Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Album of the Year series here on Music Meltdown, which we're in the dead center of the 70s right now with 1976. Bit of a weird year. Definitely some classic records came out this year, but I'd say across the board, there's not really too overt standouts. Like there are tons of records that I love, and I'd say that there's one pretty well defined top album for this year, but for the most part, I don't really think anything is too set in stone here at the top. Patrick, how are you feeling for good old?
Yeah, this is one of the weaker years, although the standout albums are fantastic for this year, real standouts, but there's not nearly as many, I think. As it's not chock-a-block, wall-to-wall, fantastic, five-star, tremendous, wondrous you know, album uh album deluxe like it was 70 through 75, I think.
For sure, for sure.
I did, but I still had to like cut some even from honorables, obviously, and so it's not like it was a bad year. And 76, there are some miserable years in like the 80s, the 90s, the aughts, the aught tens, like, that I think 76, would far and away look better in comparison to. So it's not that it was a bad year. We were so rich from 70 to 75, it's just a bit of a letdown. That's all.
For sure, for sure.
Still a good
I
year.
I probably like this on par with something like 74, but we'll
Hmm.
get there. Anyways, records just missing my list here. I got the last record of the classic era of this band. I got How Dare You by 10cc. Another one of the last records by the classic era of a band. Really underrated in my opinion. Technical Ecstasy by Black Sabbath. Got the debut record by Blondie just missing as well. Got a prop for this next one here. Didn't have much Prague 75. Prague's coming back. Trick of the Tail by Genesis missing. And then last one, I missed them in 73, but not going to miss them again. Rastaman Vibration by Bob Marley and the Wailers. Final cut. On to my top five now. Number five, I'm going with Futuristic Dragon by T Rex. A bit into their sort of more plastic soul, sort of R&B era, but still obviously at their core being a glam rock band. I think later period T Rex is pretty underrated. I like this a lot. I like Dandy in the Underworld. Um, yeah, just a really cool rock record, really delving deeper into plastic soul than even Bowie did beforehand. So really cool stuff. But then I got the self-titled release by Warren Zevon, his second record, but for all intensive purposes, basically his debut. Just a great record across the board, brilliant songwriting, great tracks, and the sort of group of people that he had playing on those records were great. Next up from there would be my winner in most weaker years. There's two records I like a little bit more. Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder. Brilliant double record, probably in the top in the conversation for the best double record of all time. I got nothing bad to say about it at all. I just realized this is an unopened
Double
bind.
album,
That.
right? A double album and an EP. Did you get the EP with yours as well?
Yeah, but if I'm being honest, the EP isn't really that great.
Oh, I love it just as much as the two albums. Go ahead.
Saturn's great. Saturn's great, but the rest of it didn't really do too much for me. He did a great job narrowing down the tracks from this session. I'll say that because pretty much all the tracks he picked are aces. Just runner up for me. Was listening to it in the car the other day. Love it, love it, love it. Still, new world record. ELO. I mean, you know me. I love ELO. I think they're
Yes, I know.
pretty
Yes.
unparalleled. And production. If we're gonna talk about production in the '70s, Jeff Lynne. His records are just brilliant pieces of music. Look at that later. But my winner for this year, I'm gonna cherish this band. I talk about them a lot. This could not be my winner sometime soon, but for now, Sunburst Finish, Bebop Deluxe. I think this is just a perfect blending of sort of art rock and sort of pop, a bit of almost progressive elements. Bill Nelson, incredible guitar player. I think the songwriting on here is really unheralded, though. Well, obviously not what you're coming to the band for. I think these are just really catchy, really memorable, but still very witty and very sort of thought out songs. Tracks like Blazing Apostles, Beauty Secrets, Ships in the Night, Heavenly Homes, just for me, really great record front to back. Got no complaints about it, really. And it's my lone five of the year, so falls to the top through that. Number one, Sunburst Finish, Bebop Deluxe.
Cool. I think you said in one of our previous episodes that you weren't crazy about power pop. Is that correct? Or you just don't like Big Star, or you don't like that subgenre in general?
50-50. I like some power pop a good bit. For the most part, though,
You don't but you don't consider Bebop Deluxe power pop.
not really. No. I think
Okay.
that's far more art pop, like proto new wave in a sense.
They are proto new wave, and they do have art pop elements too. Okay.
Yeah.
I sort of think of them as power pop, not
I
strong,
can see that. I'd compare
right?
them more
Not
to
like Big Star, for instance. Go ahead.
I compare them to something more like a 10cc or like a early 80s Genesis in that
Mm-hmm.
sense, where they're kind of straddling the line between a lot of different genres while still
Mm-hmm.
having a clear pop influence within their songwriting. It's kind of where
Mm-hmm.
I'd put them.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, wow.
Good pick. I like Bebop Deluxe. I don't like Bill Nelson. Um, all right, here's my honorables. We've got some overlaps in here, although in different overlaps, some of yours in your top five are in my honorables and vice versa. But anyway, ELO's a new world record. It is just it is the start of peak ELO. Front to back, it's almost it is a perfect album. What am I saying? Not almost, it is. It's a perfect album. Living Thing is on the starts off with Tightrope, Telephone Line, a huge hit. You've got Do Ya. They had five singles off of this album. I think Rockeria was also a single. Um, amazing. It's an amazing album. Let's see. After ELO, we're gonna go with Warren Zevon's self-titled album. You're right, it's his second chronologically, but it acts for all intents and purposes like a debut album. Um, and it's just stellar songwriting. Right out of the gate. Although he put a lot of time and effort into his craft before he got to this point. It was Jackson Brown that saw something there, and brought Zevon into a record contract and into performing as a commercial artist, and it changed a lot of I would say that it's got that late 70s LA studio sound, with some amazing, obviously, studio musicians backing him up. It's a fantastic album. Next in line is going to be Jaco Pastorius's eponymous album and his debut solo album, Jaco Pastorius, one of the greatest bass players in the 20th century anyway. And he straddled the line between rock and jazz. This was a stellar year for him because he plays bass on one of my top five albums of this year, and we're going to get to that in a second. But this album starts off with Donna Lee, which is a track made famous by Charlie Parker, and he plays Parker's lines on the bass. It is amazing. It is a great album. Sam and Dave from Stax come in and sing on a song with Jaco. It's funky, it's rock, it's jazz. It covers a whole host of genres, and Jaco really nailed it on this album. It's an amazing album. Next in line is going to be Judas Priest, Sad Wings of Destiny. Here's where Judas Priest really starts a great run of albums, and basically flirts with what I would call progressive metal in a way. The first three tracks, Victim of Changes, The Ripper, and Dreamer Deceiver, are so good. It's a 1, 2, 3 punch, and it grabs you, and it doesn't let go throughout the rest of the album. Tyrant, oh man, what a great song. You've got KK Downey and Glenn Tipton here. This is the start of that double lead guitar attack that Judas Priest is famous for. Rob Halford just singing these great operatic, like just epic heavy metal, just right in your face. Amazing album. It's a great album. Let's see. Next in line is going to be, oh, the last for honorables is going to be Bob Dylan, Desire. It's almost made it, and it's a great album. This is next to Blood on the Tracks, his best 70s work. One More Cup of Coffee with Emmylou Harris singing backup. Fantastic song. It's got one of his great protest songs, Hurricane. Um, which is about a man wrongly accused of murder and sent to prison, and eventually was freed. Reuben Carter, and it's a fantastic. It's a long story. I can't remember how long Hurricane is, 7 or 8 minutes maybe, but it's a fantastic song. It keeps you engaged the whole time. Desire, fantastic, great album. Okay, top five: Joni Mitchell, Hejera. This is the album that Jaco Pastorius plays on, and it is Joni basically. It's one of the Joni's jazziest albums so far, and it's the last of a great string of albums, I think, for Joni. Her '80s albums are hit and miss, but Hejera, uh, this is '76, so Hejera is towards the tail end of this decade. It is a drastic change from, for instance, Ladies of the Canyon, which is very folky, very Laurel Canyon. This is a very mature Joni who's been through it all, seen it all, and is coming out the other side and is basically going to play what she wants to play and compose what she wants to compose. And you've got songs about Amelia Earhart and a uh, a song called Coyote, which is just an amazing track. She plays that live with the band in the last waltz. So this was around that time as well. Uh, Jaco Pastorius is playing on this album. You've got Larry Carlton again on guitar. Just amazing album. Pajera, Steely Dan, The Royal Scam is next. This is actually my favorite Steely Dan album. It's the one right before Asia. It it is just the tail end of any rock left in Steely Dan, and they just go full on R&B, soul, and jazz after this. Um, you've got um, you've got songs like Kid Charlemagne, which is just one of the grooviest, funkiest songs. Great guitar solo by Larry Carlton again. Don't Take Me Alive, Green Earrings, oh, killer track. Love that song. And the Royal Scam itself, the title track, they're all just fantastic songs. You've still got that Steely Dan wit and sarcasm and satire abounds, and these loser characters in their songs. Great album. David Bowie's Station to Station. Here's My Plastic Soul album for 1976. And I struggle with this because Bowie dominates this decade so much. But again, right up there with Hunky Dory. I love Station to Station. It is it is the apex of David's plastic soul. He doesn't remember much about this album, if anything. He was on a cocaine bender for years, and almost killed him. Uh, he was in LA. He was basically he was immersed into the LA cocaine culture, and we're talking mid to late '70s. It would be like personified next year by the release of Fleetwood Mac Rumors. But you've got Carlos Alomar on guitar and Earl Slick on guitar, playing dual roles of lead and rhythm guitar here. You've got Dennis Davis on drums. Just again, slinky, funky. Golden Years was a hit from this track, the single, or the hit from this album, the only single I think from this album. Stays, a fantastic song, very R&B driven. So that leftover, it's a lot of leftover Young Americans tracks, basically. But I think they're even better than Young Americans. I think it's a better album than Young Americans, although I like it. Uh, Next in line is George Ben is Africa, his album Africa Brazil. This is George Ben's. This is his basically leaving the a Tropicalia style influence in his music into Afrobeat. He had definitely been listening to Fela Kuti. He, along with a lot of other artists like David Byrne and the Talking Heads. And Fela Kuti was really having his influence felt worldwide here at this time. Um, this is Pan Africanism. This is George's funk. Again, lots of funk, lots of Afrobeat on here. His big hit off of this album is Ponta de Lança Africano, or Uma Bara Uma, which is about a soccer player, and it is just got a hook that never lets go. It's an earworm that will stay with you. It's a wonderful album. It's great. But my number one is one you mentioned earlier, Songs in the Key of Life. It's one of the greatest. It's one of Stevie's greatest albums. It's one of the greatest double albums ever released. I love the EP, excuse me, as well. I think it's fantastic. But every track on here is a banger. Um, even it even starts off with a great ballad, "Love's in Need of Love Today," which is strange to start off that way, but I think a really good lead off track. It's 7 minutes long. But Stevie, it keeps it so interesting. His modals and his modals or key changes in all of these songs are just, there's so much jazz influence in here. It's probably, this might be one of his jazziest records. And I think that's part of why I love it so much. In fact, he's got a tribute song to Duke Ellington in here. Sir Duke, it was one of his big hits. He's got, I Wish, even even the deep cuts on here, like Pastime Paradise, that Coolio later sampled and had a huge with, right? Summer Soft, beautiful ballad. Isn't She Lovely? A song about his daughter. um as great. This whole album, I Wish, this whole album, just amazing. This is an amazing album. It's I can't. There's nothing bad about it, and it's a double album with an EP. Stevie just was full of just fantastic compositions. It was just oozing out of him at this time. Again, David Bowie, Stevie Wonder, Elton John, right? These Joni Mitchell. It's just as much greatness as there was. These artists just dominated this decade. It's amazing. Anyway, it's my number one.
Nice, nice. It's the album the way album wishes it could be. Songs in the Key of Life.
It's a more cogent album than the White Album for sure. It's not nearly as all over the place.
I don't know. Like Stevie's still going all over the realm of like, it's not as stylistically diverse as the Way album per se, but
Right.
he's like
Right.
exploring as far into that sound as he possibly could.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Excellent.
And he was laying down grooves. If you were going to make an R&B, a soul, or a funk album after this, you were going to have to ask his permission to do it, because he owned it after this. He
Yep.
was just, he was something else.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just outstanding. Unfortunately, probably the last time that we're going to hear from Stevie this decade. What a shame. Still, though, amazing record for a really strong year. Couldn't argue with it being number
Definitely.
one, as it's pretty close to it for me, too. So,
Right.
said, don't really have anything furthermore to add about 76. It's just a solid year. It's the 70s. We're entering the dark timeline next year, but past that, it's all good to go. Smooth sailing from there. Hope that you enjoyed. Bye.